Doug Ford backs down on his electricity tax after Donald Trump lashes out at Ontario and threatens to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. We have an update from the White House in moments.
And the markets continue to tumble in response to the trade war. We're going to talk to an expert about what this uncertainty can mean for your investments.
And we'll take you live to Brampton this hour, where a woman was stabbed to death and police say a child was inside the apartment unit to witness the incident. We'll also tell you about the man in custody tonight.
And marking 5 years since COVID was declared a global pandemic. 7 million people have died since. What lessons were learned and how's life changed since? We're talking to Peter Unick, the former head of the Ontario Science Table.
You're watching Live at 5. And we begin with breaking news out of the White House this hour. Donald Trump is now backing down on his promise to double steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%. A 25% tariff on steel and aluminum is still going into effect for Canada tomorrow.
Okay, so this development comes after Ontario said that it was pausing its surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. Right now, let's go live to CP24's Arda Zakarian, who's at Queen's Park, where Premier Doug Ford spoke this afternoon. Arda.
Well, this all started with a phone call from Secretary of Commerce of the United States, Howard Lutnick. That phone call came earlier today, and it was to Premier Doug Ford, inviting him down to Washington, D.C. to start negotiating. And Premier Doug Ford says when someone hands you an olive branch, you don't refuse. He says he's really looking forward to these negotiations. He says cooler heads need to prevail because it's been so heated between Canada and the United States. And that's when we saw the tariffs on electricity take a pause as well for Minnesota, for New York, and for Michigan. Now, we know that this is going to happen on Thursday. That's when the trip is. Here's more from Premier Doug Ford and then also President Donald Trump.
I've been pretty transparent with the federal government and everyone else. I've been mentioning it for probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, and then we had to make a move. Did it catch their attention? That's an understatement. They caught their attention. But I'm not out, and I've said it publicly, I'm not out to hurt the American people. I told the governors I'm not out to hurt them. I apologize that we have to even do this. We have to get to this point. But sometimes you have to play your cards, and this is one of the cards that we played. And hopefully we're going to have a very good, constructive conversation with the Secretary when we get down there.
As you know, there's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country. He has called and he said he's not going to do that. Okay, he's not going to do that. And it would have been a very bad thing if he did, and he's not going to do that, so I respect that.
You know, Ford even said when asked, are you going to meet President Donald Trump? He said he's not sure if he is, but of course, anything can happen. You know, things that are really unpredictable with President Donald Trump. So he's not leaving that off the table. Now, Ford said if this continues, meaning the tariffs back and forth, then he can see the assembly lines, the auto assembly lines in Canada and the United States both shutting down because they have such an intertwined network. We know we're seeing what's happening with the stock market, too, how it's tumbling. And he says we're going to have a constructive conversation going forward, going back to the table, and also building a very strong AMCAN fortress that's known around the world. He says right now China is looking at us and laughing. He says if a recession, though, does happen, it's a self-made recession, and it's happening only because of one man. He says we need a very strong Canadian front going down to the United States. He says a whole Team Canada approach. Back to you.
All right, Arda Zakarian live at Queen's Park. And again, the Premier will be meeting with the Americans, including Secretary Howard Lutnick, on Thursday. All eyes on that meeting. Thanks, Arda. Now, the trade war has been impacting the markets on both sides of the border. That's such a big storyline. Canada's main stock index continued its losses Tuesday, while U.S. markets also fell as tariff tensions between the two countries mounted.
And for more, we're joined live by Alan Small, Senior Investment Advisor with Alan Small Financial Group. Alan, you know, as the saying goes, it's all on paper until you make a move. Let's hear it.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of nervous investors out there, but of course, it's not a loss until you sell. Obviously, the markets have been reacting to the latest news out of Washington, latest news out of Canada, Ontario, Premier Ford. The interesting thing is, you know, the stock market is obviously falling, but the actual underlying strength of the markets is still there. Any of the investments in the U.S. that have been falling, they're still showing a lot of strength. In Canada, our individual stocks, our companies showing strength as well. So really, this is a political battle, geopolitics, you know, the tariffs. That's what's taking down this market. Unfortunately, if the tariffs wasn't an issue, this market would be significantly higher. So all those that are nervous, it's understandable. But one phone call, one conversation, one meeting, and all of a sudden this market could be off to the races again. And that's why you can't panic. That's why you got to stay the course, continue to own good quality investments, and be patient. I think things will work themselves out. I just don't know how long and how much we'll see the markets affected before it happens. But make no mistake about it. I think for those that continue to own good quality names and good quality investment ideas in their portfolio, you will be fine. And it's just a matter of not panicking. And if investors do panic, that's when things start to go downhill significantly.
Yeah, you never want to panic as an investor. Look, Alan, you've been doing this a long time. The reality is we've seen markets plunge before. But have you ever seen anything of this nature?
Well, we've seen, you know, in the past, we've seen actually this before. You know, markets tend to fall very quickly. There's a saying we have in the investment world, right? Markets take the elevator on the way down, but the stairs on the way up. So usually the declines are short and very abrupt and quick. And when the market climbs, it's for a prolonged period of time. It doesn't move as fast to the upside, but it lasts for longer periods of time. So, you know, we have seen this in the past. We've seen the financial crisis in 2008. We saw the markets tumble just a few years ago when both Canada and the U.S. raised interest rates 10 times to fight inflation. We saw the S&P 500 down significantly in 2022, one of the worst years on record. So we have seen markets fall. We've seen markets fall very quickly in the past as well. But again, keep in mind, you have to look at this as perhaps an opportunity to upgrade a portfolio, maybe a chance to move some investments around, maybe move from a B-class name to an A-class name, maybe upgrade the status of a portfolio or the quality of a portfolio so that when things do turn around, your portfolio is at the forefront and see the gains as quickly as possible. And I think that's what individual investors should be doing. As you said, panic is the last thing you want to do. Selling out when things are low right now or a lot lower right now, it's probably not what you want to do. You want to move things around. I don't think you should just sit there and do nothing, but you want to move things around and try to use this as an opportunity to better your portfolio rather than, running for the exits.
Hey, Alan, what is holding steady?
A great question. And there's not a lot holding steady. I interviewed an economist recently for my podcast, and he said, unfortunately, tariffs affect everybody, whether it's direct or indirectly. So if it's not you, it's affecting in your business, it's affecting your customer's business. So it's difficult to say. I guess if you had to say one thing that might be doing okay right now, maybe the price of gold. Gold, I think, is holding in quite nicely. We know that the Toronto Stock Exchange, there's a lot of gold companies that trade on the TSX. And so the price of gold, even though it's been fluctuating up and down quite a bit recently, it's been holding its value, still trading a near all-time high. So remember, gold tends to go higher when there's chaos in the world, when there is some doubt with the U.S. dollar, U.S. economy, because gold is priced in U.S. dollars. So it's kind of a hedge against the U.S. economy, U.S. currency, and it is the investment that people flock to when there's uncertainty around the globe. So I would say if you had to choose one area, it would be gold. But again, keep in mind, gold tends to be on the higher risk side, definitely not for the faint of heart, and not for most investors to move into. So it's a bit of a hedge, but you got to be very careful when buying gold.
Okay, Alan Small, Senior Investment Advisor with Alan Small Financial Group on the latest volatility we're seeing in the markets. Alan, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Alan.
Thank you.
Well, President Trump also doubled down on his commitment about making Canada the 51st state today.
Canada would be great as our cherished 51st state. You wouldn't have to worry about borders. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And by the way, Canada is very highly taxed, and we're very low tax. We're considered a low tax nation because of me, because I cut the taxes so low. So the people of Canada would pay much less tax. It makes a lot of sense. And by the way, when you take away that artificial line that looks like it was done with a ruler, and that's what it was. Some guy sat there years ago and they said, rah. Well, when you take away that and you look at that beautiful formation of Canada and the United States, there is no place anywhere in the world that looks like that.
Let's get a check on traffic now. It's 5:10, 10 degrees. Adjoa and Ciabois following the latest drive. Thanks, Adjoa.
Oh, you're welcome, Alina Bakari. It has been a busy afternoon. March breakers are out, and so are just regular people trying to get home from work. And you're running into problems if you're on the westbound 403 traveling through Mississauga. So westbound on the 403, this is right through Mavis. HOV and the left lane blocked with this collision. Another fire crew just coming on scene. They might block an additional lane, but if you're trying to get through, it's starting to get really backed up from Eglinton just as a result. On to the 401, it's also been quite the busy ride across the top of the city. No recent problems, but it's quite the busy go. And Don Valley Parkway on the northbound side starts to slow on the approach to Bayview Bloor and then opens up nicely for you as you hit the 401. On city streets, just a heads up, crews on scene of a collision blocking lanes on Jane and Steeles. I'll send it back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
A woman's dead, man's in custody. This is after a fatal stabbing inside a Brampton apartment building.
Yeah, police say a child was inside the unit at the time of the incident. Let's go live to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's at the scene on Kennedy near Steeles. That's got to be incredibly traumatizing for the child who was there. Steve, what more can you tell us about this investigation?
Well, let's start with the statistics. So statistically speaking, if a woman is murdered, it's most often at the hands of a past or present intimate partner. And Lena, you talked about the child being present in the home. That child, according to Peel Regional Police, made the phone call to 911. So that is an everlasting trauma to that young child, because they are now, or the request will be rather, that they give evidence in court as well. That person becomes the Crown's star witness at court, and it's difficult for the officers as well who have to take an interview from such a young person. That interview is very important as well, and the officers need to be careful about putting words or ideas into the mind or the mouth of the little one. So those interviews sometimes can take hours, and they're very, very difficult to do. So one person is in custody here at this address, which is 195 Kennedy Road South in Brampton, and we spoke with Peel Regional Police earlier today, and they gave us a narrative as to what happened here. Here's what we were told.
This morning, just around 8:30 a.m., we received a call for a disturbance here at a residence at Kennedy Road South and Glidden Road in Brampton. When officers arrived on scene, they did locate a female adult that had been stabbed. When further investigation, it is believed that the female is in her 40s. She was transported by paramedics to a trauma center in life-threatening condition. She was and has since been pronounced deceased in hospital.
So a man is in custody, and guys, you know, I said this often, we teach our young daughters to be very careful of that three-headed monster that's hiding in the bushes. But in reality, statistics tell us that we should be teaching our daughters to be very careful and cautious of the man that they will eventually love, because statistics show that that is where a woman is most likely to be killed, is a person that they love, trust, or know very well. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan. Steve, thank you very much. A home in Brampton has been destroyed by an intense fire. It happened early this morning.
Yeah, video shared by with CP24 by a neighbor shows massive flames engulfing the home on Wainwright Drive near McLaughlin and Mayfield Roads around 3:30 this morning. Peel paramedics tell us no injuries have been reported.
We responded early this morning to what was believed to be a fully involved garage fire, which quickly spread into the house. The fire crews had to do a defensive attack because of the fast-moving fire. We do have some collapse in the house of the first floor into the garage.
This security camera footage from a neighboring home, it shows the moment that there was an explosion at the house that caught fire. Neighbors tell CP24 it appeared no one had been living there.
There was a big blast, It was shaken. That's it. Then my son came, he said, no, there is a fire there. That's it.
So you were sleeping when this blast
Yeah, no, around 3:15, yes. There was a big blast. We were shaken, the bed almost shook. Yeah.
Did you come outside to have a look?
No, my son came, he said, there's a fire. Then he called 911.
Around 3:10, my son woke me up we were sleeping at that time. We started with a loud explosion, actually. We saw the fire in the garage, in the car. I called 911. The fire trucks were here around in 10 minutes. And they were trying since then, since 3 o'clock, it's been 3 hours. They're still trying to stop it.
And there is no word yet on what caused the explosion and if the blast is what started the fire or the other way around.
And police continue to investigate a shooting at a pub near Scarborough Town Center. It left 12 people injured.
In a statement released today, police say officers have been gathering evidence, speaking with witnesses, and pursuing leads to identify those responsible. Investigators say on March 7th, suspects indiscriminately opened fire at the Piper Arms pub as the restaurant celebrated its opening night. 7 people were struck by bullets, while the others were injured by flying glass. None of the injuries is considered life-threatening, and no arrests have been made.
All right, it's 5:16, 8 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, we'll take a look at what the city is doing to help deal with the block the box offenders they've been talking about for months. A live shot of rush hour. Stay with us.
The city's looking into the use of automated cameras to catch drivers blocking intersections along the King Street corridor.
Yeah, CP24's Melissa Duggan is along King Street West with all the details. Melissa.
Hey there, it is rush hour here in the heart of the city and the city of Toronto, now looking at taking some more steps to help keep people moving a little bit faster. So King West, that's considered a transit corridor, a priority one, running from Jarvis to Bathurst. You've got those streetcars going through, but you also have vehicles. And the issue here that they're focusing on is blocking the box. You may remember last year we were talking a lot about that because the city upped the fine if you were caught blocking the box. Instead of paying $90 if you were caught doing it, you'd be fined $450. Now, blocking the box is basically when you drive through an intersection and without the kind of time that would give you to pass all the way through it. The light might be changing, there might be more traffic in front of you, that kind of thing. So if you're caught doing it, you could pay a very hefty fine, but the enforcement of that fine is a big issue. We know that the city has been bumping up the number of traffic agents that are out here helping people get through those intersections faster, but they can't hand out tickets. So the city looking to the province to allow those traffic agents to be able to have that power, something that Mayor Olivia Chow says that Toronto police are okay with, but they still need to get the okay from Ontario for that. But the other thing is looking at automated cameras to be able to catch these drivers in the act and then send them the ticket in the mail. But the issue with that, according to a report that was done by city staffers that was out last month, is that we need new technology for that. The current traffic cameras that are in place for speeding, for red light, that kind of thing, apparently that doesn't capture an image that would be good enough to show intent, showing that you are intentionally blocking the box. So they need to work on getting that to be able to bring that up into speed, to be able to have those automated cameras enforcing this rule. I want to share more of what we heard from Chow today, though, when it comes to the enforcement of all of this. Have a listen.
We are looking for ways to get the approval for the traffic agent to give out tickets. Right now, it's only police officers that can give out traffic tickets. We're encouraging them to do more, of course, to make sure people obey the law. But the police and the City of Toronto have requested the provincial government to allow us to use the police camera to take a photo. Let's say someone is blocking the box, and then charge them because you can tell what are the licenses.
Now, we know that this is a priority for the city. For the 2025 budget, the city revealed it would be quadrupling the number of traffic agents in an effort to prevent box blocking, that at a cost of about $3 million. And Mayor Olivia Chow saying that already since they've been stepping up these number of traffic agents, that streetcar traffic has been moving 3 times faster already. So improvements already, according to the mayor, but more to come. Back to you.
Okay, CP24's Melissa Duggan, live along King Street. Thanks a lot. Right now it's 5:21, 8 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, after leading in the polls for months, Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives are now only 1 point ahead of the Liberals. We'll take a closer look at the latest numbers from Nanos Research.
The polling advantage for the Conservatives appears to have dwindled, and with the Liberals now just 1 point behind. This is according to the latest Nanos numbers.
Let's bring in CP24's Phil Perkins for a closer look at this data. The picture has definitely changed, Phil. Just a couple months ago, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were leading by more than 25 points. What do you think changed?
Well, it's not what do I think changes, is what this new weekly poll from Nanos for CTV and CP24 has showed us, that Canadians' opinions on their political priorities has changed in just 1 month's time. A month ago, as you mentioned, Lena, Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives enjoyed a 20-point lead when it came to favorability with Canadians. Now, after Nanos spoke with 1,000 Canadians, that lead is down to just 1 point. And of course, polls are polls. We'll see what actually happens at the end of a federal election, whenever that is. But that's what this one is indicating, that this is basically a coin flip right now between Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Now, mind you, this poll was taken on March 7th. That was 2 days before Carney won in a landslide to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Here's Nick Nanos, who spoke with us earlier this afternoon.
Last Christmas, over the holiday season, I think everybody thought the election was over. Pierre Poilievre would crush Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. Fast forward, Justin Trudeau's resignation, Pierre Poilievre trying to fight back, and Donald Trump kind of giving a full court press on Canada, and we can see that everything's done. So, Pierre Poilievre, who has been in the driver's seat, had upwards of a 20-point advantage 4 weeks ago.
As Nick Nanos mentioned there, so some of the factors that may have factored into Canadians' opinions changing, as he mentioned, Justin Trudeau finally resigning, the replacement race for him eventually won by Mark Carney, and this deteriorating relationship between Canada and the U.S. And we right now don't have a prime minister. Canadians right now, their shift in terms of what they're most worried about, Lena Bakari, is Donald Trump. It's not about Canadian jobs. It's not about our healthcare system. It's about Donald Trump and what he means to this country and our sovereignty. And if you want to trickle down, it does affect jobs and the economy here as well. But it seems like, according to Nick Nanos, Canadians want to see who is going to fight, have the best fight against Donald Trump. And now we'll see what this next poll is next week. Is it, according to Canadians, Mark Carney, or is it Pierre Poilievre? So very interesting turn of events. A lot can change in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's for sure. These are some really interesting numbers. Thank you, Phil.
No
it's
problem.
5:26, 7 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we're going to have an update on the redevelopment of the new St. Lawrence Market North.
Welcome back. Work is almost complete on the redevelopment of the North St. Lawrence Market.
The grand opening of the new building on the corner of Front and Jarvis, that's set for May 10th. The St. Lawrence Saturday Farmers Market is going to begin operating inside even sooner, beginning April 5th. The 5-story, 228,000 square foot building, it's been in the works since 2019.
5:29, 7 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And we're following breaking news out of the White House. Donald Trump is now backing down on his promise to double steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%. It comes after Doug Ford made a concession of his own. We're going to tell you more at 5:30. Doug Ford backs down on his electricity tax after Donald Trump lashes out at Ontario and threatens to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. We have an update from the White House in a moment.
And the markets continue to tumble in response to this trade war. We'll talk to an expert about what this uncertainty could mean for your investments. A live shot of the numbers.
And we're going to take you live to Brampton this hour, where a woman was stabbed to death. Police say a child was inside the apartment unit to witness the incident. We're going to tell you about the man in custody tonight.
And marking 5 years since COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic. 7 million people have died since. What lessons were learned? And how has life changed since? We're talking to Peter Uni, the former head of the Ontario Science Table.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. We begin with breaking news out of the White House. Donald Trump is now backing down on his promise to double steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. That's still going into effect for Canada tomorrow.
And this development comes after Ontario said it was pausing its surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. Let's go live to CP24's Arda Zakarian at Queen's Park, where the Premier spoke this afternoon, and a very different tone from Doug Ford today. Arda.
Yes, absolutely. And the events of today led to U.S. President Donald Trump calling Premier Ford a very strong man, and he says he respects his actions. Who knew that would ever happen? So what happened today, and how did all of this start? Well, there was a phone call from the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, to Premier Doug Ford, asking him to meet him in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. And he's going, and they're going to negotiate together and negotiate a deal together to see what can be possible. Now, Premier Doug Ford says he is going down with Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, and he says when someone sends out an olive branch and reaches out like that, he's not going to reject him, and that he's going to go down there very strong and very confident. He actually did call Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick a very smart businessman. He also said the same for Donald Trump, but he said we also have very smart business people in Canada too, and he's confident that they can negotiate a good deal.
Remember, folks, we never started this war. President Trump started this economic war against Canada. It was unprovoked. I truly believed that we'd move forward and it would grow both economies, would create more jobs, more economic prosperity. Well, this has gone the other way. The economy right now, I'm concerned about it. And if a recession does happen, it's a self-made recession by one person.
As you know, there's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country. He has called and he said he's not going to do that. Okay, he's not going to do that. And it would have been a very bad thing if he did, and he's not going to do that, so I respect that.
You know, Ford said cooler heads will prevail. And he said if this continued, this back and forth tariff, it only hurts Canadians and the people in the United States. He says he could see the assembly lines in the United States and in Canada shutting down because they have such an intertwined network that would be impossible for them to continue. We've already seen the damage it's done to the stock market. So he says he's confident that things are going to get better from here. He says we need to come together as Canadians. He says he needs everybody's support and really a Team Canada approach. Back to you.
All right, Arda Zakarian reporting live tonight from Queen's Park. Thank you, Arda. So Donald Trump is dropping the idea of 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, as we've been reporting, but he's still going ahead with a 25% tariff, and that goes into effect at midnight.
And right now, we're joined live by Keenan Loomis, President and CEO of the Canadian Institute of Steel Construction. Keenan, thanks a lot for joining us. Break this down. What exactly does this mean for us? What does it mean for the U.S.?
Well, it just means further that we are on a roller coaster ride with no end in sight. Today has been quite a day. I started the day doing all kinds of media, just talking about the 25% tariffs that are expected to come in on all steel and aluminum being imported into the U.S. All of a sudden, it was 50, and now we're back to 25. This leads to more uncertainty in the market, more jitters, not just here in Canada, obviously here in Canada, but in the United States as well. We've got a lot of CEOs in the U.S. wondering what the heck is going on.
Yeah, there are so many questions, more questions than answers, that's for sure. We heard the Premier saying today that this back and forth, this trade war, could shut down the assembly lines in a matter of days. Are you hearing anything about layoffs and what this might mean for your industry?
Well, we do know some layoffs in Algoma in Sault Ste. Marie. So that was the first announcement of layoffs that I have heard of. I've heard of all kinds of canceled or paused projects. Nobody wants to be the person who sends steel across the border that is has tariffs levied on it, and then the next day those tariffs being taken off, and all of a sudden you're stuck with a bill that you cannot get a rebate for. That's obviously a big issue. So everybody is just pausing everything right now on both sides of the border, even if it's just a fully domestic project in the United States. Investment decisions right now are hard to make because they take so much vision into the long-term future. And right now, as we're facing all of these ups and downs, all of these blips, and all of these threats to an economy that was in pretty good shape when inherited by this president, again, folks in the United States need to speak up and need to tell this president that enough is enough. These actions cannot be sustained.
Okay, Keenan, paint the picture for us. Let's see some of the biggest, most commonly used products that would be affected.
Well, the biggest issue for us, so I represent the fabricators across the country. We're the people that engineer the steel, cut the steel, put holes in the steel, connect the steel together so that it makes a superstructure that is a weight-bearing structure that, you build. This is your hospital, your typical school, your arena, and so on and so forth. The one thing that we don't make in Canada is what you would think of as our typical I-beam, what's called wide flange in the steel industry. We source most of that stuff from the United States. Certainly there are overseas sources for us that we are looking at because we have to at this point in time. But it's really interesting that we don't make that here in Canada. There is a possibility that we could. I think that governments are going to have to step up to repatriate that type of production because we're so vulnerable right now in a trade war with the United States.
All right, everybody holding their breath, waiting for this next round of tariffs. Keenan Loomis, President and CEO of the Canadian Institute of Steel Construction. I know you'll be watching really closely. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Keenan.
Thank you.
Well, it was a turbulent day for U.S. stock markets. This is following Trump's latest escalation in the trade war.
The Dow was off by more than 1%, and the NASDAQ was also down 0.2%. The S&P 500 closed with a loss of 1.5%. The drop following yesterday's crash, the largest single-day drop since December, raising concerns of a recession.
Really, this is a political battle, geopolitics, the tariffs. That's what's taking down this market. Unfortunately, if the tariffs wasn't an issue, this market would be significantly higher. So all those that are nervous, it's understandable. But one phone call, one conversation, one meeting, and all of a sudden this market could be off to the races again. And that's why you can't panic. That's why you got to stay the course, continue to own good quality investments, and be patient. I think things will work themselves out. I just don't know how long and how much we'll see the markets affected before it happens. But make no mistake about it. I think for those that continue to own good quality names and good quality investment ideas in their portfolio, you will be fine.
And all the key North American stock markets took a deep stumble yesterday. Well, Toronto's key index lost over 1.5%. The blue chip Dow dropped 2.1%.
Yeah, these numbers do not look good. Well, Canadian snowbirds are now being caught in one of President Trump's many executive orders.
The executive order signed January 20th will require those visiting the U.S. for at least a month to register on the government's website. The new requirements will take effect as of April 11th and exempt American Indians born in Canada who meet certain conditions. A failure to comply could result in criminal and civil penalties with fines up to $5,000.
All right, 541, 7 degrees. Let's get a check on the evening commute with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. Hey, Adj.
Hey, Lena. Yeah, we are still dealing with a couple of problems, and a brand new issue just came into the traffic desk. It's on the Toronto-bound QEW. So the start of the ramp that takes you to the northbound 427. Looks like it's just a stall, but it does have that left lane blocked. So it's definitely starting to impact your drive as you make your way through. Still pretty slow on the 403 if you're traveling westbound into Mississauga. Delays pretty much right on off the 401 out to Mavis. You're seeing an opening happening here because the HOV and left lane were blocked following a crash. That situation at least cleared. We are dealing with problems. This is on the southbound DVP at the end of the on-ramp from Bayview Bloor. Not seeing a delay, but it is a stall in the right lane. And if you're northbound on the DVP, definitely crawl from Bayview Bloor up to York Mills. Now, getting water problems that I can't see happening on the Gardner westbound. This is just as you make your way through Park Lawn. Reports of a collision that does have a live lane occupied. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thanks, Aj. It's 5:42. This is Live at 5.
A live look near Kennedy and Steeles in Brampton this hour, where a woman was fatally stabbed inside an apartment today. We're going to get an update on the investigation. We'll also tell you more about the man in custody.
A woman's dead, a man's in custody. This is after a fatal stabbing inside a Brampton apartment.
Police say a child was inside that unit at the time of the incident. Let's go live to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's at the scene on Kennedy near Steeles. Are police saying anything about the relationship between this woman and the man who's now in custody, Steve?
Yeah, not yet, Lena, and I did ask that question, and I'll give you the response that the officer gave me when I asked the question earlier on. So we are at the 195 Kennedy Road South. It's in Brampton. It's a 12-story apartment complex. Peel Police tell us that at 8:30 this morning, they received a call regarding a disturbance in one of the units. A child called 911 to report the disturbance. The police arrived on scene. They discovered 3 people inside of the unit. The child who made the call, a man in his 30s, and a woman in her 40s who had obvious stab wounds. The woman was rushed to hospital where she succumbed to her injuries. I did ask Peel Police about the relationship between the deceased and this man, and they said it was too early in the investigation to make any conclusion as to what that relationship was, and they're continuing with the investigation. Here's more from Peel Regional Police, who describes what happened when police arrived on scene.
We do have a suspect that is in custody, a man in his 30s. And anyone with any information should please contact our Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau. And we are still currently investigating, so we appreciate everybody's patience while we conduct our investigation.
So, Lena, just to further answer that question, statistically, if a woman is murdered, it is most likely done by a past or present intimate partner or a man that she trusted or at least knew. So that'll be part of this investigation as the police put together the narrative or the synopsis with regards to what transpired.
All right, Steve Ryan, live in Brampton. Thanks for that, Steve. Well, the City of Toronto is looking into the use of automated cameras to catch drivers blocking intersections along the King Street corridor.
And that's where we find CP24's Melissa Duggan, who is live with the latest. Melissa.
Hey there, Bakari and Lena. Yeah, so I'm keeping an eye on the intersection behind me here at York and King to see how traffic is flowing. And the idea is that the City of Toronto wants to better enforce the rules when it comes to make sure that cars are going through these intersections properly and not blocking the box. So that is when a car would be trying to attempt to go through the intersection and knowing that it won't be able to make it all the way through by the time that light becomes red. Now, there are some steep fines if you're caught doing it, up from $90 last year. It was bumped up to $450, but it's all about enforcing it. How do you hand out those tickets? There are traffic agents, but right now they don't have the power to hand out those tickets. So a police officer has to be nearby for that instance. So what they're looking at doing right now, according to a report that was done by city staffers last year, is improving technology so that traffic cameras that are established would be able to dole out those tickets instead. You get them in the mail, basically. And what is there right now, those traffic cameras that enforce red light tickets, that also give tickets for speeding, they don't have the proper technology. They're not able to give the proper images to show the intent that someone is indeed blocking the box. So they're looking to improve that technology. And we know that the traffic agents, though, according to the city, when they are here, that does help speed things up along this traffic corridor between Bathurst and Jarvis. Here's more that we heard from the mayor on that today.
The King Street car has moved 3 times faster because of the traffic agent. When I first became the mayor, there were 2 of them. There will soon be 100 of them. You can see them on King Street directing traffic. It eliminates those outrageous drivers that block the intersection. Because when you block the intersection, nothing is moving.
Okay, some bad timing here. We just happened to see a vehicle that was blocking the box just moments ago, just to give you an idea that, yeah, this does happen. We've been watching it on our watch here today. Something else we heard from the mayor, just real quick, is that she said that they're looking to the province to give traffic agents the power to hand out tickets as well. So that is just another step that the city could be taking to make sure that no cars are blocking the box. Back to you.
All right, don't block the box. CP24 is Melissa Duggan live along King Street. Thanks, Melissa. It's now 5:49. This is Live at 5.
Marking a grim anniversary, it's been 5 years since COVID was declared a global pandemic. Catch our conversation with Dr. Peter Uni, the former head of the Ontario Science Table, next.
And today marks 5 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. So much has changed since.
And one of the people who became a familiar face during that time was Dr. Peter Uni, the former head of the Ontario COVID-19 Science Table. He joins us live now. Dr. Uni, it's so good to see you. It's been a while, and I remember talking to you on an almost daily basis at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. When you look back at that time, what stands out to you? What do you think Ontario got right? And do you have any regrets?
Yeah, well, I think we got a lot of things right. What we got wrong is that we had our schools closed for too long. And what we also got wrong is that the rules and regulations haven't changed regarding a reflection of the airborne nature of this virus, you know. So the hospitals in Canada, probably in general, still were sticking to rules and regulations that assumed that the virus would be transmitted through larger droplets. But we know this must be airborne. And this also, you know, is important for future pandemics, actually.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question. Are we in a better position to handle the next pandemic?
Well, I would hope so. You know, I think there's something we were really lucky with, that is that we got vaccines very early. This could have gone wrong, and it didn't. It was a very lucky punch at the time. We can't rely on that part next time, but I think we have a lot more understanding among decision makers, among scientists, and among the public that allows us hopefully to deal more efficiently with the next pandemic. And it won't take another 70 years or so until it's coming. That's, you know, unfortunately, probably much, much sooner that it will be happening again.
Dr. Uni, what a time that was. I remember we were all analyzing the wastewater data. We were asking you about shutdowns, school closures, as you talked about. How difficult was it for you personally to have to make those crucial decisions that would later impact all of Ontario?
I mean, it's not that I made the decisions or so. You know, we were a team. We recommended. It was the elected decision makers who needed to make the decisions. But it was very much of a teamwork, and this helped massively. The science table really met twice a week for 90 minutes each. We worked consistently on the science briefs. We had really an extremely good collaboration with journalists. You guys helped big time. There was consistent messaging and, efforts by all of us, including you, actually just to clarify what goes on. And, you know, what we saw was that evolution was moving so rapidly. There was, one variant of concern after the next. We had to change. Science is evolving. The virus is evolving. This led to confusion, of course, and only consistent messaging could help. And I think that really explains a lot of the really quite superior performance that Ontario had. You know, for instance, compared with your southern neighbors, there is no comparison. It's clear that we did a lot better.
All right, Dr. Peter Uni, former head of the Ontario COVID-19 Science Table. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Good to see you, and take care.
Thank you.
All right, it's 5:56. This is Live at 5.
Coming up after the break, we'll tell you why Billy Joel is postponing 4 months of shows, including one here in Toronto. We'll be right back.
Tonight is your 150th performance at Madison.
Well, Billy Joel is postponing 4 months of shows, including this weekend in Toronto, as he deals with a health issue.
Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.